Welcome back, everyone, to Season 2 of Runions Have Layers. We've taken a little bit of a break and taken some time to plan our next season, which we are titling Leaving Religion. I've been away from religion for a long time, since I was about 18 or so, and Holly and I both thought this would be a good topic to dive into and to really explore and share our experiences and our perspectives. We're going to explore a whole range of topics. Today is just an introduction episode to kind of set up what our conversations will be, but we'll explore topics like identity, fate versus free will. We'll talk about religious trauma. We'll talk about culty vibes, sexuality, witchcraft, finances, politics, and many, many more. We're thinking this series will probably be around, 12 episodes or so, maybe 13, just because that's an unlucky number in religion, or at least that's what I heard growing up. Buckle up, and we're going to give a brief introduction about where this is headed.
You're listening to Runions Have Layers, the podcast where two siblings explore the many layers of life and mental wellness, where vulnerability meets strength and where every shared story is a step towards self-discovery. Join us as we uncover the richness of our experiences and find empowerment in every layer. We grew up in a Christian home from the time that we were babies, fundamental, evangelical, charismatic Christian home. And to us, it was very normal. It was just what people did. And we were really only around Christian people. We weren't really exposed to a lot of outside opinions or voices. We were very sheltered, or at least I was. I don't know if you feel like that, Brian, but I was very sheltered. And so that's really all I knew. I didn't really know life outside of that. And so it was something that continued in my life up until very recently. I started to deconstruct a couple of years ago and finally completely left religion a couple months ago. And with that, lost all of my friends or quote unquote friends. I haven't heard from any of them. Well, that's not true. I've heard from one of them for a different situation, but nobody has reached out to me to be like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? You want to get together? None of that stuff. And I've reached out to a couple people, but there's a anticipatory grieving process that goes along with leaving religion that we can talk about later on, but I had already processed a lot of that and kind of expected that to happen, which is really sad that I expected it to happen, but I did. Anyway, so I have been really kind of rediscovering my identity and who I am and what I believe and what I like and what I don't like and all of those things, because everything in my life has been informed by religion. Everything. Who I married, what I did for a job, everything was informed by religion. And most of it has had a negative impact on me. Some of it, I don't want to make that a blanket statement and say, every single thing in my life, but a good majority, I'd say probably like 90%. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like, a young teenager or a young adult rediscovering who I am without religion and, what is my moral compass and all of those things. So it's just been a really confusing ride, but it's also been very liberating for me. And it's not something that I regret at all. What about you, Brian?
Yeah, I just want to go back and say that there was this saying that was very popular when I was growing up. At least I learned it was that like we grew up on a pew, and if you don't know what a pew is, if there's anyone out there, it's like a traditional, I guess, bench or something that you'd find in a church, and it's very true that we both grew up, in church. Our parents made us go to church, and we didn't have a choice unless we were like really, really sick. And so that was just something that we had to do every Sunday morning. We had to go to Sunday school, and we had to go. I mean, we did church 3 times a week, 2 services on Sunday and 1 on Wednesday, and there wasn't really a choice about that. That was just part of life. And I mean, when I was a kid, it was kind of fun because it was kind of a social thing. I got to see friends that I didn't get to see all week because we went to different schools and all of that. So I think when I was younger, I didn't mind it so much because it was kind of a fun thing, especially on Wednesday. There's the youth group and everything, and I played music, and there was a lot of like, I mean, I think like you said, it's not my experience is not all bad. Like there are a lot of things that I have taken away from that experience, and that I think are good things that I learned and that I have held on to. There's certain memories and certain things, but I think overall, as a whole, religion has really tainted a lot of a lot of the things that I am still dealing with today on like how to see the world with a broader perspective, and that
Mm.
there's more to life than black and white. And so like I think I started to really deconstruct a lot of that when I was probably a teenager. I've always been someone who questions things in general. I'm always curious and trying to dig a little deeper. And I just started wondering, and I didn't talk to anyone about it. I just started wondering. I was like, like, is this is this real? Like, is this what people like? Like, am I just too young? Like, am I eventually going to get it? Because when I was young, I was like, this doesn't really add up to me. Like, I just don't. I'm not understanding this. Like, our church, we went to a evangelical.
Pentecostal?
Yeah, Pentecostal. Yeah, which is not totally exactly, but we went to an Assemblies of God church, and they believe in speaking in tongues.
Do you want to explain what Pentecostal is? Because I said charismatic, and it's very, at least to me, it's very spiritual. Well, I mean, religion as a whole is spiritual, but there are some branches of Christianity or denominations of Christianity that are more ritual
Mm-hmm.
based, like Catholics and I think Methodist and Presbyterian. And don't quote me on that because I really don't know, because they were always the bad Christian, like they weren't quote unquote real Christians, so I don't really know much about them.
Yeah,
But Pentecostal or charismatic was very like listening to the voice of God and listening to the Holy Spirit and being led by that, and speaking in tongues was supposed to be your private prayer language and things like that. Um, Anything else you
yeah.
can think of that I just wanted to explain that for people who may not know.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like tradition is a word that I think about. I mean, there were some people who were in a different, I guess, vein of Pentecostal, which was like women who wore skirts and that was all they wore, and their hair was long and they didn't cut it. It was very like I was going through my notes and I was just kind of writing a bunch of stuff down this morning before we started, and one of the words that came up was control.
Hmm.
And I just feel like there's a lot of that, especially like towards females. I feel like there's a lot of like controlling what they can and can't do. And you can absolutely speak more on that. But so in terms of Pentecostalism, I think tradition is the word that I think of the most when I think of Pentecostal. And I think it's so fucked up that religion says, "Oh yeah, we'll take, come in whoever you are, whatever you are, doesn't matter what sin you've done, God will forgive you, blah blah blah." But then they'll say stuff like, "Oh well, Catholic people aren't real Christians," and it's like it's not a competition. Like if people want to come and they want to do whatever they're doing at this church and they want to do something else at another church, that's fine. It doesn't have to be one way. And even between Christianity and Judaism and
Hmm.
Islam and all of that stuff, it was always like, oh, those are like idol gods. That's not the real true God. And I mean, I remember hearing that all the time, and I was just like, what makes what we believe any better? And I think that's part of what started the deconstruction for me, was starting to question like, well, who's telling you that this religion is not that it's the right one. And so the more curious I got and I started doing a lot of my own research and just curious, what Buddhism is, what Hinduism is, um, and really exploring like what are these other religions, what do they teach, what are people taking away from them, and essentially they're all the fucking same. They're literally like the same story. They have the same content. It's just in a different language and it's framed differently to go with that culture. So essentially they're saying that whatever the religion is wrong because it's not called Christianity.
Right.
So yeah, I just never really understood that. So, and I started questioning from the time I was, I think 15 or 16. And I felt like because mom and dad wanted me to be that way, and people at church wanted me to be that way, I felt like I was faking and I was just trying to fit in. And like I said, I was like, well, maybe eventually I'll start to get it and understand it, and maybe I'll have this like awakening moment. And the more and more I started questioning and asking, I was like, I don't think this is ever gonna, like, I think the way I feel is I just have to go with that, because I don't think it's gonna end up panning out the way I think it is.
I agree with you about, the viewpoint, come as you are. Jesus loves you, and then you come as you are, and they're like, "Oh, but not like that." And it's very much a thing of come as you are, and then God will change you. Well, that's not real acceptance. That's not real love. Saying that you're accepting someone for who they are and who they are, at their very core, and then saying, "Oh, but then you're going to change so that you're going to be more accepted and you're going to be without sin and all those things." And that I just think that's very hypocritical. And the way that they look at it is so twisted. It's like you come in
Mm-hmm.
like the very message at its core of Christianity is that we are born bad. Think
Mm-hmm.
about teaching children that they are born bad and that they're going to go to a fiery hell. Like, I don't know about you, but I had nightmares growing up about going to hell. And then I was terrified I was going to miss the rapture, which that the rapture is a whole other issue. It's a whole other
Yeah.
episode to get
Right.
into. Um, but it's like, my whole like Christianity is very fear based. And while I don't feel like our parents drilled that fear into us, that religion did, constantly, day in and day out. We
A
were
hundred
expected
percent.
to do devotions and spend our quiet time with God and like, all of those things. And it was just, it was very fear based.
Yeah, I agree. And praying and having, I remember there was like prayer nights that we used to go to sometimes. And I mean, they had invitation
Oh, like an
or
altar call.
altar call, like after every service, like, oh, anyone who's not saved, or if you need blah, 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 blah. And it's like, there was always this like call to action,
Uh-huh.
essentially, to convert someone
Mhm. Or
from a
to
sinner
quote, get right with
to.
God because you've sinned that week. And so you need to come down and
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, which like really confused me, because I was like, if you're a Christian, why are you constantly coming down every single week?
Mhm.
Because you feel like you need to, get right with God or something. It's like, isn't this supposed to be a personal relationship with God, quote unquote? And like you're saying, it's hypocritical, because the things that they're saying and the way that they're acting is not lining up.
Mhm.
And they're saying, oh yeah, this is what it is, but then they give you a hard time and they judge you about it whenever you like don't do something right, or you're not showing up to church, or you're not coming to prayer, or you missed a service or whatever. It's just like, oh, you're backsliding, and it's like you can't have a life outside of church. You have to prioritize church 100%. I don't know, there's just like a lot of like that sort of stuff that I observed, and I was just like, this is what I don't want to live like this. I don't want to feel like I'm obligated to come to church. I want to come because I want to come.
Right.
Like if you go to a concert, you want to go because you want to go to the concert, because you want to listen to music that you like. You don't want to go because you are going to be judged or someone's going to give you a hard time if you don't go. And then you're going to be there and you're not going to have a good time. You're not going to enjoy your time there. And then you're going to start to resent it. So, which is
Yeah.
what I did.
I you know,
And
I
the day I turned 18, I stopped going to church. I remember I turned 18 on, I don't remember what day it was
you don't
exactly,
remember
but
your
I remember
birthday?
that next,
It's November 8th.
no, I remember my birthday, but not the
No, I
day
know.
that I turned 18. so I remember that next Sunday, I didn't go to church, and mom was like, "Hey, you're going to church?" I said, "No, I'm not." And she said, "Yeah, you are." I said, "No, I'm 18 and I'm not going anymore." And I fucking slept in
Mm.
and I didn't go, and I never went after that again. Well, I did go to another like church service thing. I was playing with a band, and it was like, it wasn't really a worship thing, it might have been a worship thing. I was playing with a band, and I was playing drums, and we did this like kind of special concert thing. And there was someone who was like preaching after that, and I remember I was sitting up in the balcony because I didn't want to be down, and I was just listening to it, and I was like, man, this is such a performance.
Mm.
Like it just feels so fake, and I hadn't been to church for like a year or something like that. And I remember going back, and it was the first time I'd been back in a church, and I just was listening to everything that they were saying, and I was just like, this sounds like someone is just like reciting lines. Like it feels so fake.
Yeah, I think back over my life and I wonder why I didn't have that same feeling or reaction. Because I had doubts, I had questions, all growing up, things in the Bible that don't make sense or that contradict each other or, whatever. And there was always some kind of answer given. But when I was coming of age and turning 18, I remember being told, and I don't remember who it was. It was either mom or dad, and it wasn't necessarily in these exact words, but it was a message that like you have to be a Christian or serving the Lord or something like that to live in this house is the way that it was presented to me. And of course you're younger than me, so it wasn't you didn't receive that, but it was almost like like I had nowhere to go. Where was I going to go? After that, I don't know why I didn't question or I didn't, probably because I got married to someone who was in the ministry, as an evangelist and then a pastor. And it was just like I sang and he preached. And it was just something that we did and that I accepted. And I was always the good girl, like I didn't want to, I've always been a rule follower and I didn't want to do anything wrong. And I didn't want people to think badly of me and I mean, I was still scared of going to hell. I mean, let's just be honest. I mean, my whole life has been
Mm-hmm.
dictated by that fear that if I step outside the will of God, that I'm going to hell. And, I mean, that is a terrible way to live.
Yeah.
Terrible.
I still have that fear sometimes
Mhm.
whenever, yeah, just I'm just thinking or whatever, or like I talk to someone who is talking about religious stuff, or I overhear conversations. Sometimes I think about that, and it's just like it's so ingrained in me,
Mhm.
that fear-based, like, oh, if you don't get right with God, or oh, you don't do this, that you're going to go to hell. And it's like the fact that people don't acknowledge that enough and say that like that is a fear-based approach of basically convincing people to convert to Christianity, like that's their sell. If you don't get right with God, then you're burning. We're gonna set you up in flames and you're gone.
Right. And we learned about a literal hell. There are some denominations that teach about a metaphorical, I can't metaphorical isn't the right word, but not a literal fire burning, but that's what we were taught, that it was a literal burning
Mm.
fire in hell that we're going
Yeah,
to go
lake of
to
fire.
and be damned for eternity if we didn't accept Jesus and let him change us. And yeah, I mean,
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. And it's like I think now, like, why didn't I question more? And I think it's because it didn't occur to me, as ridiculous as that sounds, because I was raised in it. And so it's like I had the attitude that, the backsliders, like, oh, well, they're going to hell. And it was very like I was very judgmental toward people, and I had waves of what I used to call a crisis of faith, where I would have doubts and I wasn't sure if I believed. And I would always come back, but that was based on fear. It wasn't based on empowerment and I'm making the decision that's best for me. And this is what I truly want to do. It was all based in fear.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said about how mom and dad kind of they basically gave you an ultimatum that, if you want to keep living here, you have to believe this way. And that goes completely against, I think, what the idea of Christianity and religion is supposed to
Yeah,
be.
about having a choice.
Yeah, but we're talking about it and actually it being a relationship.
Mhm.
and then it becomes this, oh, it's not your relationship. I'm gonna make you have a relationship. I'm gonna make you believe that way, and whether you want to or not. And again, it goes back to control.
Mhm.
And it's like you're gonna do, and not just, I don't think just religious control, but I think parental control of like, I'm the parent, you're the kid, and you're gonna do what I say because I'm the parent and I get to choose.
Right, because the
And but
control of the
that goes
religion,
parallel with
yeah,
religion
the
too.
control of the religion or what's in the Bible informed parental choices and,
Yeah.
discipline and all of that. But yeah, it was a very much a control. I'm gonna, you have to be raised as a Christian. Like we didn't get a choice, like you said, whether or not to go to church or whether or not to even explore other religions. I remember as a teenager, I wanted to go to another church that was closer because a lot of my friends went there. And I mean, mom and dad almost didn't let me go at all because it was a different church.
Wow.
And it was just like, it was crazy. It was crazy. And I've
That
done,
comes into the culty vibes that we're going to talk about in an
yes,
episode.
yes.
There's this band that I listened to from high school called As Cities Burn, and they have this lyric that I always comes to my head. But there's this lyric that says that hell is an imaginary place made up to make children behave, because it's like this fear-based thing. Because it's like, hey, if you don't stop, you're going to go to hell. If you don't treat your sister right, you're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
And like I heard that kind of stuff growing up all the time. So it is very much fear based.
Yeah. I remember I was a kid. I don't remember how old, but probably at least like 10 or 11. And, I had a friend over and I don't know where I got this, but it was somewhere down the line from church. And I told her that if she didn't get saved, that Satan was going to chop her up into tiny pieces and boil her in stew.
Oh my God.
We're still friends. We're still friends. But
Wow.
yeah, I mean, her dad, very rightly so, was pissed. Like, who
Hmm.
says that crap to people, you know? And I thought I was just evangelizing, or I was, trying to get her saved.
But I think the weirdest thing for me was when I would go to school and I would see someone that I went to church with, and like we're just like different at school.
Hmm.
It was like you're a different person at school than you are at church, and there's always this difference of like, okay, I'm at church and
Mm.
I'm going to perform, and this is how I'm supposed to act at church, so I'm going to
Yes.
act this way. And so I think that was a big part of, for me, deconstructing what I believed in and leaving and making that decision is like, I'm like two different people.
Hmm.
I'm one person this way and I'm another person outside, and I'm this way at home because I know mom and dad want me to act a certain way. And so I felt like there was this constant struggle between like, who am I? Like,
Yeah.
why? I don't want to live like this. I don't want to continuously having to decide or having to split who I am. I just want to be me, and I don't want to have to pretend. And I felt like every time I went to church, I was pretending. I
Right.
was pretending to be someone that I wasn't, and I was faking it.
Yeah.
And that was just, I just couldn't continue with that anymore. So I just had to just leave. And I was so happy that I could just do what I wanted. I didn't have to feel bad about it. For a long time, I feel like I had to come down from a lot of that and just be okay with doing whatever I wanted and not having this feeling of like, oh my God, like I'm doing something wrong
Mhm.
and I can't go do the things that I want to do, and I can't be the person I want to be because, oh, I'm gonna go to hell or whatever. And so I think for like a year, at least a year, there were a lot of moments where I was just kind of like, am I doing the right thing? Is this right? Like, am I gonna like suffer because of the things that I want to do? But I think as time went on and I was living life and I learned more and got more perspective on religion as a whole, I started to feel more agency with life and more independent decisions, and just less fear overall. But I think at first it definitely had a lot of reservations.
Mhm.
Like, it felt good to not have to go to church. It felt good to like have my own choice. But because of that fear that is instilled in you of like, if you don't do this, or if you don't follow God, then you're going to go to hell. Like, that fear is such a strong feeling that I felt it for a long time.
Yeah.
And like I said, I still sometimes.
It really is. And I'm glad you brought up the like the identity and being two different people, because that is something that I am my goal for this year, for 2024, was authenticity. Like that's my word of the year quote. And I finally feel like I can be authentically myself, who I am without apology, share my opinions, say what I want, talk how I want, be like I am no longer pretending. I'm done pretending to be someone. And that doesn't mean that the whole time that I was a practicing Christian that I was pretending, but there was definitely two personas. And of course, and at the church and in Christianity, the whole premise is to live your life 100% fully for the Lord, so that you're not two different people. But I mean, that's literally impossible to adhere to the Bible 100% of the time. I remember feeling similar to what you said, when I remember hearing a sermon, or it was, I don't know, in like a Bible study, and someone said, when we get to heaven, we're going to be worshiping the Lord forever. That's all we're going to be doing. And I was the only one in the room that was like, that does not sound fun to me. Like I was on the praise and worship team. That was like my passion. And, I was truly had a heart for worship and all of that. And I was like, what? Like that's what we're doing
Yeah.
forever for the rest of our lives. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me. And I was like, I don't
Mhm.
think and this was probably, I don't know, 10 years ago. I mean, I don't remember. It wasn't like recently, but it wasn't, in our childhood. It was semi-recent, I guess. And that was, I
Mhm.
don't want to say that was the beginning of the end, because I definitely had, other places where I doubted. That was one of my, crises of faith that, I talked about. But I was just like, seriously, that's what we're living for, is to just, you
Right.
know,
Exactly.
worship a God when the Bible says, don't have idols. Like that makes no
Yeah,
sense.
exactly. You said uncertainty or unsure or like no, I think you said uncertainty. And it makes me think about what religion is as a whole. And I think that religion, to me, at least in everything that I've learned, is that everyone wants to know, where did I come from? Why am I here? And where am I going?
Mhm.
And to me, I think that's all religion is for. I think people like to feel comfortable. They want to know that the reason why they're here and like where they're going, again, fear, that they want something to hold on to that makes them feel better about the life they're living and where they're going to go, about their loved ones, all this sort of stuff. And I think as soon as you stop holding on to that so much, it doesn't matter anymore. It's like, who cares where we came from? And if you just acknowledge the fact that when you die, and that's literally it. That's how I believe. I don't believe in afterlife. I don't think that gonna nothing is gonna happen. I don't think that you're gonna go anywhere. I think you go into the ground or you burn or whatever, in terms of cremation, not to hell. So I think that once people get past that, trying to understand the before, during, and after piece of it, and almost every religion, at least all the ones that are similar to Christianity, Islam and Hinduism, Christianity, uh, and even Buddhism, is like trying to answer those questions of where did we come from, why am I here, and where am I going. And for me, like I just kind of I let go of all of that altogether, and I just started accepting that, yeah, like this is my life now, and I'm gonna enjoy my life, and I'm gonna be present now. And that doesn't mean I'm gonna go off the rails and do crazy stuff and just like do whatever I want. When you start living life for you instead of for something else or someone else, it feels more meaningful, and it feels more fleeting and more important, I think,
Mhm.
whenever you're like, this is my time, and this is the moment we have right now, and the moment we're having now will never happen again. And that you just have to make every moment count. And it's hard to do that just in general. But instead of like living your life for this thing that is supposed to happen when you die, and you go through your whole life giving all of your time and effort and energy to this idea that you don't even know if it is actually going to happen.
Mhm.
People are like, oh, well, have faith
Mm.
that this is going to happen. It's like, okay, have faith that you're going to win $1 million in the lottery. Like essentially that's what you're doing,
Yeah, it is.
And you're
It
like,
is.
I'm gonna I'm going to buy a ticket every day hoping that I will win $1 million. And you never fucking win it because winning the lottery is not easy. Yeah, some people do, but the odds that you are going to win the lottery are very slim. And so I kind of compare it to that. It's like you're buying a ticket that is not going to get you anywhere. So
I know.
Why waste your money?
Right. And think back to when we were kids. I mean, they were saying that the rapture was going to happen. Jesus was going to come back in like 1988 or whatever. And then they've just been saying that these are the last days for years, And it's just like, are they? Yeah. Are they?
And even now, it's like I started hearing that again recently, and I was like, oh, here we go again. Like the end days are here, like the solar eclipse. The end days are coming because a solar eclipse is happening for 4 minutes. And just like stuff like that. But we're going to be talking a lot about a lot of these different subjects. We're going to dive a lot deeper into many of the things we talked about. This is, again, just an introduction episode to give you all a little taste of kind of where we're heading with this and where we came from and why we decided to make this. So we hope that you'll stick around and you'll listen to the episodes and get a little bit deeper dive on a lot of these subjects. We're going to give a lot of our own personal experiences, but thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Thank you for joining us and peeling back the layers today. If you enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to support it, please share it with others, and please leave a review, like, subscribe, all that jazz. For more information about us, you can visit runionshavelayers.com, where you can find how to get connected with us and find resources mentioned in our episodes. Bye for now.